So let's see. In this lesson, we're going to talk about functions a little bit. Functions. Actually, functions is the name that's used in Python. In Logo, we talk about procedures. So procedures or functions are pieces of code that have been written either by you or by somebody else that can be used over and over again. And in Logo, let's see, the functions that have already been, or the procedures that have already been written are called primitives or primitive procedures, and you find them in the vocabulary. Okay, so any of these procedures that have to do with, there are a bunch of math procedures. There are a bunch of procedures having to do with turtles and graphics. Click on, click off, color, distance, everyone, fill, glide, forward is a procedure. Left and right are procedures. All of those are primitive procedures that have already been written in Logo. So you find those from the Logo vocabulary. In Code Sculptor, you can look in the docs section, and that shows you all the you can find, like if we go to math. Wait, is it the math module? No, let's look at, I think, integers and floating point numbers. Yeah, if you look at integer and floating point numbers, you'll see all these math primitives that we talked about, and also some other ones like, so let's look at abs for a second. So abs stands for absolute value, and that's something that you will return. Basically, the way to think about it is, if you're on the number line and you're asking how far away am I from 0, that's basically the way to look at it. It translates that so a positive number remains positive, 3 becomes 3, and negative 3 is also a distance of 3 from 0. It's just 3 steps in the opposite direction, so that also gets a 3. Okay, and in Logo, they have a similar thing. I think we just saw it in the vocabulary. If you look under math, there's abs, stands for absolute, reports the absolute value of its input. So if you type in, let's see, show the absolute value of 3, it's 3. Or if I say show the absolute value of negative 3, that's also 3. Okay, so all right, so that's how you find, and in Python we call these functions built-in functions, because they come along with Python. Python also, and you find this in a lot of programming languages like Java or C, there are also lots of libraries of functions. So these are just, big sets of functions that other people have written that you can reuse. So we'll run across that later. For example, when we start looking at the simple GUI stuff, that's a library that was written that we're going to use functions from there. Let's see what else. Okay, so I brought up this Logo project that you may have seen before if you were in one of my earlier bits and blocks classes. But the idea behind this this project right here is that functions can have, the way to think about functions is that they can have different inputs and outputs. So for example, home, and we talk about in Python, in Logo, we talk about commands and reporters. Some functions report information and some don't. So like the home procedure is a command with 0 inputs and also no outputs. Okay, so because it's a command, we know it doesn't have outputs. So if we can draw the tank for that, and it looks like this. There's nothing entering or leaving the function. But we can also have functions like, let's say, well, maybe a good one would be remainder that we talked about earlier. So remainder takes 2, it's a reporter because it has an output. It outputs a number. And it takes 2 inputs. So let's draw that tank. Okay, so remainder takes a number, and it takes 2 numbers as inputs into these guys. We'll call these hoppers. So there are 2 hoppers for remainder because it has 2 inputs, and it has 1 output. It outputs a number. Okay, so let's say, for example, what we could have for inputs is if we had 7 divided by 2, let's see, how do we move that? So we have 7 divided by 2. So we have a 7 here and a 2 coming in over here. And we can also draw little arrows to show that they're entering the function. Okay, so 7 goes in here, and a 2 goes in here. So 7 divided by 2. Well, 2 goes into 7 3 times, and there's a remainder of 1, right? So the remainder, let's just go ahead and make the 1. So the remainder is going to be 1. Oh, I need this guy. Okay, the remainder is, the remainder is going to be 1, and we can also draw an arrow and have that come out. Okay, so that's our function. So you can also have a function that that has input but no output, or that has output but no input, right? So there are different kinds. But this is the basic way to think about how functions work. Also in Python, there are these things called keywords. Let's see, do I have anything about keywords in here? So here, they call them simple statements here. So there are things like break, continue, print is one of these, and return is another one. They're special words that are not procedure names, but they have special meaning. And Also, like if and for in Python are considered, special kinds of keywords. So in logo, what we'll see in a minute is that like there's a keyword to. Say, if we want to write a function called to rectangle area, and there's a special keyword end, right? These words have special meaning. They're not procedures, and they're not variable names or things that you want to use like to as a variable name or as a function name. They're special words that are reserved just for the language for their use. So that's the basics of functions and procedures. So we call them functions in Python, procedures in Logo, and both languages have built-in have some functions or procedures built into the language that you can reuse, and then you also have the option to write your own. So in the next video, we're going to talk about writing your own procedures and functions.